Are you dreaming of growing super long dreads? Maybe you're in the baby phase of the lock journey and you're just envisioning yourself with long dreads, driving a sports car, windows down, sunroof open, and the dreads are just blowing in the wind. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be discussing 5 ways to grow long dreads. If you do these 5 things, you will absolutely get to your goal of having long dreads. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the Atreyu Locs channel. Hi, I'm Atreyu, a semi-freeformer who is dedicated to bringing you the best tips to grow a healthy set of locks. If this is your first time, make yourself comfortable. I am glad to have you. So, in today's video, I am going to be discussing 5 things that you should do or should not do, depending on your perspective, if you want to grow long dreads. These are 5 of the things that I have done over the course of my lock quest, aka lock journey, to make sure that I was able to grow super long dreads. And now I am passing that knowledge on to you. So let's just get right into it. The first thing that you are definitely going to have to do, people, is resist the temptation to cut. Now, there are various reasons why you may want to cut your locks. For instance, you may develop buildup and feel like your lock journey is over, not knowing of things like ACV rinses and clarifying shampoos. You may be in the ugly phase of locks, thinking that it's going to last forever, which I promise you it will not. Maybe you're further along in your journey and you're just having a bad hair day. You just don't like the way your locks look, even though you've really loved the way they've looked in the past. Or maybe you actually just miss short hair, and because it's been a while since you last had short hair, you think that having locks is too much work because of the retwists, the maintenance and such, right? Forgetting, of course, that hey, when you have short hair, you also have to maintain it. You have to go to the barber, pay money, or you have to cut it yourself. So there's really a lot of maintenance involved with short hair. Or maybe you just miss the fades and you just think it'd be easier to not have to deal with long hair. Those are all temptations that can come up, that can crop up over the course of a lock journey. So you have to say no to each and every one of those temptations. You have to definitely remember what your goal is, which of course is having long dreads, right? Long locks, long dreadlocks, and stick to it. Have tunnel vision when it comes to your locks, and that way you will continue progressing forward toward your goal. The second thing that you will need to do if you want to achieve long dreads is stay away from bleach. I know bleach is cool. I know it makes for cool colors. It allows you to get your hair to a certain color where you can play with other colors using dyes and stuff. But ultimately, people, the reality is that bleach, to make your hair that lighter color, breaks down the hair structures. And eventually, and when I say eventually, I mean like over the course of several years, eventually and inevitably, that bleach part of your hair will become compromised and it will break off. So if your goal is to have long dreads, then you don't want to bleach, because you know at some point in the future that it's going to end up falling off, it's going to be damaged, maybe it's going to look bad and you end up just cutting it off, and then that's going to keep you away from your ultimate goal of having long dreads that much longer, because you've cut off 4 or 5 inches where you bleached. So if you want to have long dreads, remember, keep the goal in the forefront of your mind, then stay away from bleach. That's just another temptation, kind of like the temptation to cut your locks. Stay away from bleach. The third thing that you will need to do if you want to grow long dreads is to pay attention to thinning. Now, as I've discussed in multiple videos, there are different types of thinning. 2 important ones to note. One is where you're thinning at the scalp, meaning you have fewer hairs coming out of your scalp. So it's kind of like your hair thinning, you're going bald, something like that, right? Even though you may not be going bald. You could just be doing too much maintenance, which leads to or can lead to traction alopecia. And so you're kind of aggravating and maybe even destroying hair follicles. And when you do that, then you eliminate the possibility of hair growth. One way to combat that is to back away from all the maintenance, if that's the case for you. Okay, so there's that type of thinning where you have fewer strands coming out of your scalp going into the lock, and so the lock thins out. Then there's another type of thinning where you're not thinning at your scalp, meaning you still have a good number of hairs coming out of your scalp, but the lock itself is thinning. Once again, not because you have fewer hairs coming out of your scalp. Remember, you have the same number of hairs coming out of your scalp, but it's because your hair grows away from your locks. So that new growth that's coming out of your scalp is not growing into the lock, okay? So there's something that you can do to fix that. I'm going to mention that in later points, so definitely keep watching. But yes, just pay attention to any type of thinning, because there are things that you can do to potentially help that situation. The fourth thing that you need to do to make sure that you grow long dreads is to make sure that you get enough moisture. Now, there are several ways to get moisture into your hair. One, of course, is through your body, and that's probably the best way, drinking enough water, right? But there are other things that you can do, like just putting moisture on your hair and then sealing it in with an oil, which will help to keep the moisture in your hair strands for a longer period of time. Now, I realize that not everyone uses oil. I used to use oil occasionally on my locks, but now that I suffer from seborrheic dermatitis, SD, oil is no longer an option for me right now. So what I've noticed though is, because of my now current washing regimen, which entails me washing my locks every other day basically, and sometimes consecutive days, even though I'm not using oil to seal in the moisture, my locks are staying very moisturized. Why? Because they're being exposed to water every other day. So there are multiple ways to make sure that your locks have enough moisture. Number one way is by drinking water. Number two way is by moisturizing occasionally and using oil to seal in that moisture. But then if that is no longer an option for you, as is the case for me right now, then washing more often, exposing your locks to that water on a continual basis will also help to keep the moisture in your locks. If you don't keep your locks moisturized, then they obviously will become dry and brittle, and that can lead to breakage, which will ultimately keep you away from your goal of attaining long dreads, right? See how it all fits? So yeah, make sure your locks stay moisturized. Don't over moisturize, okay? Too much of anything in excess is bad, but definitely make sure they're getting enough moisture, and you can just feel your locks. If they're feeling all crunchy, then yeah, moisture is lacking. The fifth thing that you can do to ensure that you grow long dreadlocks is learn about the different techniques that you can do to strengthen your locks. For instance, if you are someone who has hair that grows away from your locks, the scenario I presented to you earlier, then one thing that you can do is take that new growth once it's long enough and braid it back into the lock. Remember that new growth, it grew away from the lock. So say there's a lock in the center. These are the new growth hairs, and it's growing away from this lock in the center. Okay, imagine the lock in the center. So what you want to do is take these hairs and then start to braid them around the lock. That will immediately strengthen your lock. Another technique that you can use is the crochet hook. If you have weak spots along your locks, something that you can do is find a weak spot and then fold the lock over itself, okay? And then use a crochet hook to go in there and mat the hair together, and that weak spot will be eliminated. Another technique which I created, if you're a dude and can grow beard hair, is to use your beard hair to strengthen weak spots along your lock. So you guys can see that just by being aware of various techniques, you will be able to maintain strong, healthy locks that will not be susceptible to breakage. If you didn't know about these things, say you didn't know about the braid technique, then yeah, your hair would just continue to grow out and you have that weak spot, and then maybe if you didn't know about moisture, then it would get dry and brittle and then break off, and then that would keep you away from your goal of having long dreads. But because you know about the braid technique, then you know, oh, my hair grows away from my locks, I can braid it into the lock and I'm good. And oh yeah, my locks are looking dry, they're gonna be brittle before I know it, so you know, let me drink a lot of water or let me moisturize or whatever. You can do these things to keep your locks strong and to keep you on the right path. So do these 5 things and you too will be able to grow long, healthy dreadlocks. If you want to learn more about seborrheic dermatitis and my experience with it, definitely check out the end card. If you choose to love, do so unconditionally, because loving with conditions conditions the heart to not really love at all. This is Atreyu Locs, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.